Okay, let's dive into this brilliantly concise piece of microfiction that stretches a few sentences into a profound existential journey. We're looking at a text simply titled The Last Watch. It's tiny, literally just a paragraph, but man, it packs a serious punch. It forces us to confront the actual boundaries of our own existence. It's like a giant puzzle compacted into a handful of words. So let's get right into it. So, what if you knew exactly when your clock would hit zero? It's a heavy thought, isn't it? Most of us just walk around in this comfortable, protective bubble of ignorance regarding our own expiration date. But this text, it strips that veil away immediately. It sets up a world where the ultimate unknown of human existence actually becomes a hard, measurable fact. Keep this question in the back of your mind as we move through today's explainer, because as you'll see, having this specific knowledge literally changes the entire game of life. Well, let's look at exactly where this whole thing kicks off. 10. Our protagonist doesn't get this world-shattering news on his deathbed or during some midlife crisis. He gets it on his 10th birthday, right when childhood innocence usually starts bumping into the harsh realities of the real world. Imagine carrying the absolute, undeniable knowledge of your own mortality from the time you were just a kid. It completely reframes his developmental years. From day one of his preteen life, the clock is quite literally ticking. And here's where it gets really interesting. Look at this stark paradox. We've got a gray plastic watch that acts as the device, counting down the exact time he had left in the world. The object itself is just completely mundane. It doesn't look like a magical glowing relic or some ancient mystical hourglass. Honestly, it sounds like a cheap toy you'd pull out of a cereal box. Yet, it carries the heaviest metaphysical burden you could possibly imagine. It perfectly grounds this massive, existential concept into an incredibly ordinary, everyday object that you or I could be wearing right now. So the crucial point is right here. Because of this object, we get this massive revelation. He was never afraid because he knew exactly how much time he had left. This flips our normal understanding of human psychology completely upside down. Usually, thinking about death brings up deep anxiety, right? But the text makes this fascinating argument. The fear of death isn't actually about the dying part. It's about the deep uncertainty of it all. Because our guy has absolute certainty, his fear is completely eradicated. His boundaries are clearly drawn, and knowing those boundaries makes him practically invincible. Let's pause and turn this premise back on you for a second. Truly think about this. Would knowing your exact timeline liberate you to live fully, or would it completely paralyze you? It's the ultimate psychological test. If you saw the literal days, hours, and seconds ticking down on your wrist, would you freeze up under the pressure? Or, like the boy in our story, would that inescapable limit give you the ultimate permission to stop worrying and finally start living? Well, the text shows us exactly how our protagonist handled it. He didn't hide away. No, he lived life to the fullest. He's out there climbing mountains. He's swimming oceans. Without that unpredictable threat of an untimely end hanging over his head, he attacks the physical world with incredible vigor. The ticking watch doesn't restrict him. Ironically, it acts as an absolute, foolproof safety net. He knows he won't die on the mountain, and he knows he won't drown in the ocean, because the watch says he still has time. It pushes him to explore without a single drop of hesitation. But, time marches on. The fierce climbing and the wild swimming eventually give way to a profound sense of quiet peace. The text frames this transition so beautifully, noting that he reaches old age having lived well. The watch wasn't just a harsh timer. It was a faithful guide that ensured a life without any wasted days. It's a highly deliberate, deeply fulfilled existence. Which naturally brings us to the ultimate threshold. What actually happens when you reach the very end of your time? We've followed this man from a 10-year-old kid staring at a plastic toy to a daring adventurer, and finally into this fulfilled old man. And the watch has been flawlessly accurate, ticking down second by second for decades. The suspense right here is incredibly potent. All biology, all logic points to one absolute, unavoidable conclusion when that timeline runs out. Zero, the absolute culmination of his known lifespan. And then the tension breaks with this beautifully simple line. As the watch ticked away to zero, the old man smiled. This completely subverts what we expect from a story about death. He isn't weeping. He isn't clinging to the last milliseconds in terror. Arriving at zero doesn't represent a tragedy for him. It represents absolute fulfillment. He finished the race. He completed the task of living. And that quiet smile proves that the contract he made with that gray watch at age 10 was fully honored. But wait, then the numbers didn't stop. Hang on, What? After an entire lifetime of absolute mathematical certainty, the fundamental rule of this universe just breaks. The countdown reaches the end, the man is entirely prepared to pass on, and the mechanism just keeps going. It is an instant, dizzying pivot from a peaceful resolution straight into an utter, bewildering unknown. They turned into a countdown in reverse. And this brilliantly illustrates the unknown. The sheer shock value of this final line recontextualizes the whole shebang. A reverse countdown? What does that even mean for the boundaries of reality? Is he gaining time back? Is time itself moving backward? Has he entered a completely new state of existence? That rock-solid certainty that removed his fear for his entire life has just been shattered in a single second. If we pull back and look at the macro-narrative arc we've just unpacked, it's wild. Year 10 brings the watch and sets the rules. Adulthood brings extreme action, climbing and swimming, fueled entirely by that certainty. Year 0 brings the logical, expected climax, smiling at the end of a life fulfilled. And then, the impossible conclusion at year -1 and beyond, counting in reverse. Each logical phase built beautifully toward a climax that ultimately shattered the very logic it was built upon. Which leaves us with a final, lingering thought. If your countdown reversed, what exactly are you counting toward? We began this explainer exploring a life clearly defined by a hard, known end. But now, at the very moment of conclusion, we're faced with an infinite, unmapped horizon. I want you to sit with that existential mystery for a bit. Think about what lies past 0. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and until next time, keep questioning the boundaries of your own reality.